Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a moment ago, I heard the minority whip profess interest in working with the Democrats to reform the health care system. Yet I'm sad to say that the minority whip, the minority leader, have been part of an effort to deal with fear and misrepresentation, attacking bipartisan legislation that would have done precisely that, reform the health care system. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, there are some here who simply are not expressing the sense of urgency that most of us feel from the American people, a sense of urgency about fixing a broken health care system that costs too much, that produces wildly uneven results, and leaves too many outside the system of coverage and others with health insurance at risk. We cannot continue along this path. Americans are not getting the help they need, even if they have insurance coverage. I was, I must say, disappointed, to say the very least, to see the attack on bipartisan legislation that we have worked on to help reform the health care system. In a statement from the minority leader and with the whip and Mr. McCotter, there is an allegation that somehow there is legislation in the health care draft that may place senior citizens in situations where they feel pressured to sign end-of-life directives that they would not otherwise sign, that may start us down a, quote, treacherous path towards government-encouraged euthanasia if enacted into law. Well, Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. Had the minority leader and his whip and the conference chair bothered to check how that legislation came to be enacted into our health care legislation, they would have found out that it was work of a bipartisan group of Ways and Means Committee members. There were Republicans co-sponsoring it along with Democrats. We had spirited discussion dealing with the fact that too often senior citizens and their families are not given the information they need to be able to cope with the most serious situation any of us will ever face as we have a loved one move into the end of his or her life. We discussed how Medicare would pay for tests to hook people up, to poke them, to run them through machines, to have them on ventilators, to do all sorts of things, but it will not pay a healthcare professional to sit down with that patient, with that family, and let them know what they expect. Answer their questions. Help them know what their choices are. We had examples of committee members talk about their loved ones, and I would say Republican committee members talk about how their loved ones didn't get that type of help at the end of life and actually were subjected to things that they thought were not in the best interests of their loved one. If they had a choice, they wouldn't have done it over again, and it didn't prolong their life. It actually made them less comfortable. We're seeking to change that, to be able to adjust Medicare so that it speaks to the needs of American seniors and their families, that they're given the attention they need to prepare for this difficult period of time. There's nothing in this legislation that would force people to have consultations. There's nothing that would force them to sign advance directives. It's not going to choose a healthcare professional by the government and force it on it. It's the type of sad, inflammatory rhetoric that suggests that people aren't serious about health care reform, not serious about meeting the needs of Americans' families, but rather they're playing political games. Mr. Speaker, I can't tell you how disappointed I was to see this type of reaction to a carefully crafted piece of legislation that we've been working on for more than 6 months, that is bipartisan, and that speaks to the needs of American families. The American public, especially our senior citizens, deserve our best efforts to meet their needs, not treat them like political footballs. I hope the Republican leadership will reconsider and that we'll be able to enact provisions like this to help our senior citizens.
Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, Mr. Speaker, would